When 10-year-old Daniel Reyes pushed his overloaded shopping cart full of empty soda cans and beer bottles across the cracked asphalt of a Tucson Safeway parking lot on a Saturday afternoon in late September, most people looked away. Some stepped aside with expressions that said they'd rather not see whatever struggle was playing out in front of them. But when the boy paused beside a row of Harley-Davidsons to carefully organize his cans so none would fall, and one of the bikers noticed the kid's hands were shaking from hunger and his sneakers were held together with duct tape, what happened next would prove that sometimes the people who look the hardest are the ones who see the clearest. The Safeway sat on the east side of Tucson, Arizona, in a neighborhood where strip malls had seen better days, and half the storefronts wore for lease signs like surrender flags. The parking lot was busy that Saturday, filled with weekend shoppers loading groceries into sedans and SUVs, families herding kids toward minivans, retirees taking their time in the desert heat that still pushed 90 degrees even in late September. It was the kind of everyday chaos where people moved through their own orbits, focused on their lists and their schedules and their lives, barely registering the existence of anyone outside their immediate concern. Marcus Kane was leaning against his Road King in the shade of the building's overhang, waiting while his brothers inside grabbed cold drinks before they continued their ride out to Saguaro National Park. He was 52 years old, vice president of the Desert Steel Motorcycle Club, a man with sun-weathered skin and a gray beard that had gone white at the edges. His black leather vest carried patches that told a story: Marine Corps insignia from 2 tours in Iraq, a Purple Heart rocker, the Desert Steel colors showing a motorcycle silhouette against a saguaro cactus. He'd been riding with Desert Steel for 14 years, ever since he came home from his second deployment, and needed something that felt like the brotherhood he'd left behind in the desert overseas. Marcus was checking his phone when he heard the metallic rattle of aluminum cans shifting in a shopping cart. He looked up and saw the kid. A boy, maybe 10 years old, Latino, small for his age, with dark hair that needed cutting and a face that carried the kind of exhaustion that didn't belong on someone so young. The kid was pushing a shopping cart that was overflowing with empty cans and bottles, the kind people returned for recycling deposits. The cart was so full that cans threatened to spill with every step, and the boy kept having to stop and rearrange them, his small hands working quickly to keep everything contained. What caught Marcus's attention wasn't just the cart or the boy's obvious poverty. It was the way the kid moved, efficient, practiced, like this was routine, like he'd done this 100 times before. The boy wore a faded Phoenix Suns t-shirt that was 2 sizes too big, cargo shorts with visible holes in the pockets, and sneakers that had been repaired with silver duct tape wrapped around the soles where they'd separated from the uppers. His backpack looked ancient, the kind schools handed out for free to kids who couldn't afford their own. The boy stopped his cart near the row of motorcycles, not blocking them, but close enough that he was using them as a landmark or maybe seeking the shade they provided. He started reorganizing his cans again, stacking them more carefully, and Marcus could see the kid's hands were shaking slightly, not from fear, from hunger. Marcus had seen that shake before in the field, in soldiers who'd been running on empty for too long. One of the cans fell and rolled toward Marcus's boot. The boy darted forward to grab it, moving with the kind of speed that came from not being able to afford losing anything. He snatched up the can and looked at Marcus with an expression that was part apology, part wariness, part, "Please don't tell me to leave." "Sorry, mister," the boy said quietly. "I didn't mean to bother you." Marcus picked up another can that had rolled in his direction and handed it to the kid. "You're not bothering me. That's a lot of cans you've got there." The boy took the can carefully, like it was valuable, and placed it back in his cart with precise attention. "Yeah, I've been collecting since yesterday afternoon. There's a recycling place on 6th Avenue that gives you 5 cents a can. I've got maybe 300 here, so that's about $15. Marcus did the math automatically. 300 cans at 5 cents each, $15. That was hours of work for a 10-year-old kid walking around Tucson in September heat, digging through trash cans and dumpsters, carrying heavy loads for $15. "That's good money," Marcus said, keeping his voice neutral. "What are you saving up for?" The boy's face flickered with something. Not pride exactly, but a kind of determined dignity. "Groceries. My mom needs to eat." The words hit Marcus like a punch. Not wants to eat. Needs to eat. The boy said it matter-of-factly, like it was just information, but Marcus heard everything underneath it. The fear, the responsibility, the weight of knowing your parent was hungry and you were the one trying to fix it. "Your mom at home?" Marcus asked carefully. "Yeah, she can't work right now. She's sick." The boy looked down at his cart, rearranging cans that didn't need rearranging. "She tries to tell me we're okay, but I know we're not. We ran out of food 2 days ago. She keeps giving me her portions when we do have something, but I know she's not eating. So I'm collecting cans to buy groceries." "How old are you?" Marcus asked, though he already knew the answer would break his heart. 10. "I'm Daniel." Daniel. Marcus looked at this 10-year-old kid who should have been playing video games or riding bikes with friends or worrying about homework, but instead was pushing a shopping cart full of cans across a parking lot because his mother was too sick to work and too proud to ask for help. "Where's your dad, Daniel?" The boy's jaw tightened. "Gone. Left when Mom got sick. Said he couldn't handle it." Marcus felt something cold and hard settle in his chest. A man who abandoned his family when they needed him most. A boy left to shoulder responsibilities no child should carry. A mother too sick to work, probably too sick to apply for assistance, probably caught in that terrible gap where you were too ill to function, but not sick enough for emergency intervention. What's your mom sick with, if you don't mind me asking?" Daniel hesitated, then said quietly, "Lupus. She has bad days and worse days. Right now it's a worse days stretch. Her joints hurt so bad she can barely move sometimes, and she gets so tired. The doctors gave her medicine, but it's expensive, and we can't always afford it. So sometimes she goes without, and then she gets worse." Marcus knew about lupus, had a buddy in the Marines whose wife had it, knew it was an autoimmune disease that could be managed with proper treatment but was brutal without it. Knew that stress made it worse, and poverty definitely qualified as stress. Knew that medical bills could bury a family even with insurance, and without insurance, they were impossible. "Daniel, how long have you been doing this, collecting cans?" "Since Mom got too sick to work." "Maybe 4 months now." "I do it after school and on weekends. Sometimes I find good spots where people throw away lots of cans. There's this park where families have picnics and they leave tons of cans in the trash. And behind the college dorms, students throw away everything. 4 months. This 10-year-old had been supporting his mother for 4 months by collecting recyclables. Marcus thought about his own 10-year-old self, thought about what he'd known about survival and responsibility at that age. Nothing. He'd known nothing. This kid knew everything. "Have you eaten today, Daniel?" The boy's face went carefully blank, the way kids' faces did when they were trying not to show how much something hurt. "I had breakfast." Marcus didn't believe him. "What did you have? Some crackers." "We had crackers left." "Just crackers?" Daniel nodded, still not meeting Marcus's eyes. "Mom tried to give me half, but I told her I already ate at school yesterday. I lied because I wanted her to have more, but school doesn't give us food on weekends, and I used the last of the peanut butter on Thursday." Marcus looked at this kid who was lying to his sick mother to make sure she ate, who was spending his weekends scavenging for cans, who was holding his family together with duct-tape sneakers and sheer determination. He thought about the Desert Steel's mission statement, the words they'd adopted when they formed the club. "We ride for those who can't. We stand for those who fall. We protect those who need us." "Daniel, I want you to listen to me very carefully. You're doing an amazing job taking care of your mom. You're brave and strong, and you should be proud of yourself. But you're also 10 years old, and you shouldn't have to do this alone. Do you understand what I'm saying?" The boy's eyes filled with tears that he blinked back furiously. "I don't know what else to do. We don't have anybody. It's just me and Mom. I have to take care of her. I know you do. And you are. But I'm going to help you. Me and my brothers. We're going to make sure you and your mom have food. We're going to make sure you have what you need." Daniel looked at Marcus with an expression that was half hope, half disbelief, entirely desperate. "You don't have to do that. We'll be okay. I just need to collect more cans." Marcus shook his head. "You're not collecting any more cans today. Today you're coming inside with me and my brothers, and we're buying groceries for your family. Real groceries. Enough to last you a couple weeks at least." "I can't," Daniel said, backing up a step. Mom says we can't take charity. She says we have to handle things ourselves. Marcus understood pride, understood that single mothers struggling to survive had to hold on to their dignity with both hands because it was sometimes the only thing they had left. But he also understood that there was a difference between charity and community, between handouts and brotherhood. This isn't charity, Daniel. This is neighbors helping neighbors. This is people who have enough helping people who need some. There's no shame in that. Your mom would do the same for someone else if she could, right? The boy nodded slowly. She used to volunteer at the food bank before she got too sick. Then she understands that communities take care of each other. She's just on the receiving end right now instead of the giving end, and that's okay. Someday when things are better, you can pay it forward to someone else who needs help. Daniel was still hesitant, still holding onto that cart of cans like it was his lifeline. Marcus's brothers emerged from the store at that moment. Jax, the club president, a massive man with a shaved head and a beard that reached mid-chest. Reaper, the sergeant-at-arms, wiry and intense with tattoos covering both arms. Steele, the youngest member at 28, a former Army medic with kind eyes. They saw Marcus talking to the kid and approached slowly, reading the situation. "Brothers," Marcus said. "This is Daniel. He's 10 years old and he's been collecting cans to buy food for his sick mother. I told him we're going to help him get groceries today." Jax looked at the cart full of cans, at the boy's duct-taped shoes, at the exhaustion in his young face. He knelt down to Daniel's level. "Your mom know you're out here doing this?" Daniel nodded. "She tries to tell me not to, but I do it anyway. She needs to eat." "You're a good son," Jax said simply, "and Marcus is right. We're going to help you. That's what we do." Reaper was already pulling out his phone. "I'm calling some of the other brothers. We can get a real shopping run together, not just groceries, but household supplies, medicine if the mom needs it, whatever they're missing." Steele looked at Daniel with the practiced eye of someone who'd triaged patients in combat zones. Kid looks dehydrated and undernourished. "We should get him something to eat right now." Marcus nodded. "Daniel, when's the last time you had a real meal?" The boy thought about it. "Tuesday, I think. We had spaghetti on Tuesday. Today was Saturday." This kid hadn't had a proper meal in 4 days. Marcus made a decision that felt as natural as breathing. "Daniel, leave the cart here. We'll deal with it later. Right now you're coming inside with us and we're getting you food. Then we're going to fill a couple carts with groceries for you and your mom. And then we're going to figure out what else you need." The boy hesitated, looking at his cart of cans like abandoning it meant abandoning his responsibility. Marcus understood that feeling. The feeling that if you stopped working for even a moment, everything would fall apart. "Your cans will be safe here," Marcus said gently. "I give you my word. And $15 worth of cans is good money. But we're about to get you more than $15 worth of help." Daniel finally nodded, releasing his grip on the cart. Marcus led him inside the Safeway while his brothers followed. The store was busy with weekend shoppers, people loading carts with steaks and wine and luxury items that represented a world Daniel probably couldn't imagine right now. Marcus took the boy to the deli section first. "Pick out a sandwich, any kind you want, and chips, and a drink. Whatever sounds good." Daniel stared at the display case like it was overwhelming. He pointed tentatively at a turkey and cheese sandwich. "That one's okay." Marcus ordered 2 of them, large sizes, plus a bag of chips and a bottle of apple juice. He handed one sandwich to Daniel. "Eat. Right now. Don't argue." The boy took the sandwich with shaking hands and unwrapped it slowly, like he was afraid it might disappear. Then he took a bite and his eyes closed briefly, and Marcus saw the exact moment the kid's body recognized real food, after days of crackers and empty promises. Daniel ate that sandwich like it was the best thing he'd ever tasted, taking careful bites at first and then faster as his hunger overwhelmed his politeness. While Daniel ate, Marcus's brothers were making phone calls. Within 15 minutes, 6 more Desert Steel members had arrived at the Safeway. Word had spread through the club's group chat. Kid in trouble, mom sick, family starving, brothers needed. And they came, because that's what brotherhood meant. Bull, a retired contractor in his 60s, showed up with his wife Elena. Wrench, a mechanic who owned his own shop, arrived on his bike. Hammer, a former social worker, came with his partner Marie. and 3 younger prospects arrived together, guys in their 20s who were still proving themselves to the club, but who understood that service was part of the patch they were working to earn. Jax organized them with the efficiency of a man who'd led convoys through hostile territory. Bull and Elena, you take 1 cart and focus on basics. Rice, beans, pasta, canned goods, things that last and stretch. Wrench and Hammer, you guys get a cart and handle fresh stuff. Vegetables, fruit, meat, eggs, milk. Prospects, you're on household supplies. Toilet paper, soap, cleaning supplies, laundry detergent. Steel, you come with me. We're hitting the pharmacy section for over-the-counter stuff and seeing what we can do about prescription assistance. Marcus stayed with Daniel, who had finished his sandwich and was watching this mobilization with wide eyes. The boy looked overwhelmed, like he couldn't process what was happening. "There's 9 of you," Daniel said quietly. "You all came here for me and my mom? We all came here because you needed help and we can give it. That's how this works. When one person hurts, we all show up. But you don't even know us. We know you now. And that's enough." The Desert Steel members moved through the Safeway like a well-coordinated operation. Shopping carts filled rapidly with food, with supplies, with everything a struggling family might need. Bull was reading labels and calculating value, making sure every dollar stretched as far as possible. Wrench was selecting quality cuts of meat and fresh vegetables that would provide real nutrition. The prospects were loading industrial-sized packs of toilet paper and household essentials. Steele and Jax returned from the pharmacy section with bags full of over-the-counter medications, pain relievers, vitamins, first aid supplies. Steele pulled Marcus aside. "The kid mentioned his mom has lupus and can't always afford her prescriptions. I got the name of her rheumatologist from Daniel. I'm going to make some calls, see if we can connect her with patient assistance programs or find a way to help with medication costs. There are programs out there, she just probably doesn't know how to access them or doesn't have the energy to navigate the system right now." Marcus nodded, grateful for Steele's medical background and his knowledge of healthcare resources. That would be huge. The kid said she sometimes goes without her meds because they're too expensive. That's probably making her lupus worse, which makes it harder for her to function, which makes their poverty worse. It's a vicious cycle, but we can break it. While the brothers shopped, Marcus sat with Daniel on a bench near the front of the store. The boy was still processing what was happening, his eyes tracking the shopping carts that were being filled with food and supplies for his family. "This is too much," Daniel said. "I can't pay you back for all this." Marcus looked at this 10-year-old who thought he had to carry the weight of the world on his small shoulders. "Daniel, when I was in the Marines, I got injured in Iraq, took shrapnel to my leg and couldn't walk for 6 months. I was in a dark place, thought my life was over, thought I was useless. And my brothers, the guys I served with, they showed up. They helped me with groceries, with bills, with everything I needed until I could get back on my feet. I didn't ask them to. They just did it because that's what family does." The boy was listening intently. "Did you pay them back?" "Not with money. I couldn't. But years later, when I was doing better, I started helping other veterans who were struggling. I paid it forward instead of paying it back. And that's all we're asking you to do. Someday when you're older and you're doing better, you help someone else who needs it. That's how you pay this back." Daniel nodded slowly, understanding settling into his young face. "I can do that. When I'm grown up and I have money, I'll help kids like me." "That's exactly right. And until then, you just focus on being 10 years old and letting the adults handle the adult problems." The shopping took an hour. When they were done, they had 4 full shopping carts, over $800 worth of groceries and supplies. The Desert Steel members pooled their money at the checkout, each contributing what they could, not keeping track, not caring about exact amounts. Just brothers taking care of someone who needed help. They loaded everything into Bull's pickup truck because it was the only vehicle that could hold all the bags. Daniel gave them his address, an apartment complex on the south side of Tucson that Marcus knew by reputation. Low-income housing, high crime, the kind of place where people lived because they had no other options. The convoy of motorcycles in Bull's truck rolled through Tucson with Daniel riding on the back of Marcus's Road King, wearing a borrowed helmet that was too large for his small head, but that he wore with fierce pride. The boy's arms were wrapped around Marcus's waist, and Marcus could feel him trembling, not from fear now, but from something that felt like hope. They pulled up to the apartment complex 20 minutes later. It was exactly as grim as Marcus had expected. Peeling paint, cracked concrete, cars on blocks in the parking lot, security bars on the windows. The kind of place where poverty wasn't just visible, but unavoidable, pressing down on everyone who lived there. Daniel led them to a ground-floor unit, apartment 14. He knocked on the door with a pattern that was clearly a signal. "Mom, it's me. I'm home. And I brought help." The door opened slowly, and a woman appeared. She was young, maybe mid-30s, but illness had aged her. She was painfully thin, her face drawn with exhaustion, her dark hair pulled back in a ponytail that showed gray roots. She wore sweatpants and an oversized t-shirt and leaned heavily on the doorframe like standing required effort she could barely manage. Her eyes went wide when she saw the 9 bikers standing behind her son. "Daniel?" But her voice was weak, strained. "Who are these people?" "Mom, these are my friends. They're from a motorcycle club. They helped me. They bought us groceries." Daniel's voice was bright with excitement and relief. "They bought us so much food, Mom. We're going to be okay." The woman, who Marcus assumed was Daniel's mother, looked at the assembled bikers with an expression that cycled through confusion, fear, pride, and then crumbling gratitude. Her eyes filled with tears. "You didn't have to do this." Marcus stepped forward, keeping his voice gentle. "Ma'am, I'm Marcus Kane. Your son was collecting cans in the Safeway parking lot to buy you groceries. He told me you haven't been eating because you're sick and can't work. We'd like to help if you'll let us." The woman's face worked through several emotions before settling on something that looked like surrender. The kind of surrender that came when you'd been fighting so hard for so long that you didn't have anything left. "I'm Sophia Reyes, and She looked at her son, at the bikers, at the truck full of groceries. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," Elena said, stepping forward with the practical warmth of a woman who'd probably raised children of her own. "You just let us bring these groceries in and get your kitchen stocked. Then you sit down and rest while we put everything away." Sophia stepped aside, and the Desert Steel members moved into the small apartment with bags and boxes. The place was clean but sparse, furniture that was old but well-maintained, walls that were bare except for a few photos of Daniel at various ages. The kitchen was tiny, and when Marcus opened the refrigerator, he found it nearly empty. A half-gallon of milk that was probably expired. Some condiments, nothing else. The cupboards were similarly bare. The brothers and old ladies filled that kitchen until it overflowed. Canned goods lined the shelves. Fresh vegetables went into the crisper drawer. Meat filled the freezer. Rice and pasta and beans stacked in the pantry. Household supplies went under the sink and in the bathroom. It was a transformation that took 30 minutes and would impact this family for weeks. While the others organized the kitchen, Steele sat down with Sophia in the living room. He explained that he was a former Army medic, that he had some knowledge of lupus and patient assistance programs, that he wanted to help her navigate the healthcare system to get the medications she needed. Sophia listened with tears running down her face, nodding, occasionally answering his questions about her diagnosis and her current treatment plan. Hammer, the former social worker, joined the conversation. He explained that there were resources available, food assistance programs, utility help, possibly disability benefits if her lupus was severe enough. He offered to help her file applications, to navigate the bureaucracy that was deliberately complicated to discourage people from seeking help. "I tried to apply for assistance before," Sophia said quietly, "but the paperwork was so complicated and I was so sick I couldn't focus, and I was ashamed. I worked my whole life. I was a nursing assistant before the lupus got bad. I took care of other people. I never thought I'd be the one needing help." "There's no shame in needing help," Hammer said gently. "You got sick. That's not your fault. And the system is designed to be hard to navigate. That's why you need someone to help you through it. That's what I'm offering." By the time the Desert Steel members finished, Sophia and Daniel's apartment had been transformed. The kitchen was full. The bathroom was stocked. Steele had scheduled a follow-up appointment to take Sophia to a free clinic that specialized in autoimmune disorders. Hammer had gathered the paperwork needed to apply for assistance programs. And Bull had slipped an envelope with $500 in cash into Sophia's hand, telling her it was for utilities and rent, not to be proud, to use it. Sophia sat on her couch surrounded by bikers who looked terrifying but who had shown nothing but kindness, and she wept. Daniel sat beside her holding her hand, and Marcus saw the weight lift from the boy's shoulders, the weight of being 10 years old and responsible for keeping his mother alive. Before they left, Jax gave Daniel a Desert Steel t-shirt, youth-sized, with the club logo on the front. "You did good, kid. You took care of your mom when she needed you. You're tougher than most grown men I know. You ever need anything, you call us. We're your brothers now." Daniel put on that shirt and stood a little taller. "Thank you. Thank you for seeing me. Thank you for helping." The Desert Steel members filed out of the apartment and stood in the parking lot as the sun began to set over Tucson. They'd spent over $1,000 and an entire afternoon helping a family they hadn't known existed that morning, and every single one of them felt like they'd received more than they'd given. Marcus was the last to leave. He paused at the door where Sophia stood with Daniel beside her. "Ma'am, we're going to check in on you and Daniel regularly. Make sure you have what you need. Make sure you're getting to your medical appointments. Make sure Daniel gets to be a kid instead of your caretaker. That's not negotiable. That's just what's happening now." Sophia nodded, too overcome to speak. She just reached out and hugged Marcus, this stranger who'd chosen to see her son, to believe him, to act. And Marcus hugged her back, thinking about all the times in his own life when someone had shown up for him when he needed it most. The following weeks brought changes that rippled outward from that Saturday afternoon. Steele connected Sophia with a patient assistance program that provided her lupus medications at drastically reduced cost. Within 2 weeks of consistent treatment, her symptoms improved enough that she could walk without pain, could think clearly, could begin to function again. Hammer helped her file for disability benefits and food assistance, navigating the bureaucratic maze that had defeated her when she'd tried alone. The applications were approved within a month. Bull hired Daniel to help at his small construction office on Saturdays, filing paperwork and organizing supplies. It wasn't real work, just an excuse to pay the boy $20 an hour for a few hours a week. But it gave Daniel legitimate income and the dignity of earning rather than receiving. The boy saved half and spent half on things his mother needed, small luxuries they'd gone without for months. The Desert Steel MC adopted Sophia and Daniel as extended family. Brothers checked in regularly, stopping by with groceries or supplies, taking Daniel to club events where he was treated like a little brother by men who'd seen combat and heartbreak and understood the value of protecting those who couldn't protect themselves. The club's old ladies included Sophia in their activities, inviting her to dinners and gatherings, giving her the community she'd lost when illness had isolated her from her previous life. 6 months after that Saturday at the Safeway, Sophia was working again. Part-time at first, then gradually full-time as her health stabilized with proper medication and reduced stress. She got a job at a medical billing company, work she could do from home on bad days, work that paid better than her previous nursing assistant position. She and Daniel moved to a better apartment, nothing fancy but safe and clean with a small yard where Daniel could play. Daniel stopped collecting cans. Instead, he joined the Desert Steel's youth outreach program, where the club taught young people about motorcycle maintenance, responsibility, and community service. The boy who'd been forced to grow up too fast was finally allowed to be a child again, but he carried with him the lessons of those hard months, the understanding that struggle was real, that community mattered, that asking for help wasn't weakness but wisdom. On the 1-year anniversary of their meeting, Marcus took Daniel on a long ride through the Arizona desert. They stopped at a scenic overlook where the sun painted the saguaros gold and the mountains stretched endlessly toward Mexico. Daniel stood beside Marcus's Road King, wearing his Desert Steel Youth Chapter vest with pride. "You changed my life," Daniel said simply. "You and all your brothers. I don't know where me and Mom would be if you hadn't helped us." Marcus shook his head. "You changed your own life, kid. If you were out there fighting for your mom, doing everything you could to keep her alive. We just gave you some backup. But the courage, the determination, the love that made you push that shopping cart full of cans across a parking lot, that was all you." The boy was quiet for a moment, looking out at the desert that had tested him and tempered him. "When I grow up, I want to be like you, like the Desert Steel. I want to help people who are struggling like we were. Then, you're already on the right path, because you understand what it's like to need help, and people who've been there make the best helpers. They rode back to Tucson as the sun set, Daniel's arms wrapped around Marcus's waist, the desert wind carrying them home. And Marcus thought about how easily he could have looked away that Saturday afternoon, could have ignored the kid with the shopping cart full of cans, could have decided it wasn't his problem. How most people had looked away, had decided exactly that. But he'd chosen to see, to ask, to act. And that choice had saved a family. The story of Daniel and the Desert Steel, spread through Tucson's motorcycle community, became a reminder that the men in leather who looked intimidating were often the ones most willing to step up when others stepped back. The club started a program called Seeing the Invisible, partnering with schools and social services to identify families in crisis, kids who were falling through the cracks, situations where a little help at the right time could prevent catastrophe. Over 2 years, they helped 17 families, connecting them with resources, providing emergency assistance, showing them that struggle didn't have to be faced alone. Daniel grew up knowing that he mattered, that his efforts to save his mother had been seen and honored, that the worst period of his life had led to connections that would sustain him forever. Sophia grew up knowing that pride was important, but community was more important, that accepting help when you needed it didn't diminish you, but connected you to something larger than yourself. And Marcus and his Desert Steel brothers grew up knowing that their patches meant something beyond leather and ink, that brotherhood was measured not in miles ridden, but in lives touched, in families saved, in children who learned that the world held people who would show up when you needed them most. Because that was the truth that Daniel's shopping cart full of cans had revealed, that poverty was real and grinding and everywhere. That children shouldn't have to shoulder adult burdens, but sometimes did with heartbreaking courage. That most people looked away from struggle because seeing it required action, and action required sacrifice. But that some people, the ones who'd lived through their own hard times, who'd been saved by someone else's choice to help, those people chose to see, chose to believe, chose to act. And in that choice, they proved that communities were built one decision at a time, that family could be found rather than born, and that sometimes the most important thing you could do was notice a 10-year-old boy pushing a shopping cart full of cans and decide his struggle mattered enough to stop your own life and step in. If you've ever felt invisible in your struggle, if you've ever been the child trying to hold your family together, if you've ever walked past someone in need and wished you'd stopped, share this story. Because Daniel and the Desert Steel prove that awareness matters, that action matters, that the choice to help one family can ripple outward to transform an entire community. Subscribe for more stories that remind us we're never as alone as we feel, that strangers can become family, and that the people who've survived the hardest times often become the ones most willing to reach back and pull others forward.